Hey everybody, it's another episode of Did You Know Anime Season Commentary. And if you're listening to this, that means we just finished another season of Did You Know Anime, and that's going to be kind of our cycle. We're going to do a season of Did You Know Anime, and then we're going to record a commentary, just so, much like with anime and manga, we don't overlap ourselves, don't have anything else to do after the end of a season, or we have to catch up, or, typical anime manga problems. But third time's the charm. I got my good buddy, Jay Lobo,
Hola.
and we are going to go over season 3 of Did You Know Anime. So put your grasses on, nothing will be wrong, and settle in. Gurren Lagann.
How could I forget that this was season 3 starter? How could I forget? Couldn't have asked for a stronger note or stronger first impression for a season. I mean, we always try to do that.
Oh, yeah.
I think we do always do that, but man, this was all you. I remember that. You knocked this out quick. I don't know. People don't want to. You don't want.
Well, I mean,
but you did, man.
Well, I mean, the thing I want to talk about this, and the reason I did it so quickly, was because there's so much to talk about with Gurren Lagann. Like, most Gainax shows don't have the problem where you have nothing to talk about. They have so much to talk about. Just like the universes that you're watching fly by right now, there's a universe worth of facts and trivia to talk about with Gurren Lagann. And this was one, actually, that from the very moment I started doing it, I said to myself, I'm not doing Gurren Lagann unless I can get Kamina to do it. And history is history, so...
Did he believe in you?
Oh, I mean, he must have, and I think he also believed in himself, because he was super happy to do it. Kyle Hebert, phenomenal voice actor. You'll probably know him as the voice of, Teen Gohan, or I guess regular Gohan, the narrator for DBZ, and a whole plethora of other things. And yes, I'm going to say plethora. That is a legitimate thing to say. But this is actually an interesting little thing here. Where they said how they had they were going to go bankrupt if they did a 27th episode of Gurren Lagann, which, I mean, typical Gainax,
That's
right?
Of part of the course for Gainax.
It's pretty part of the course for them.
I also find it funny, I had to watch this several times, but about Gurren Lagann, he was saying, impossible. It can't be done. It's like, excuse me, I thought we were going to do the impossible and break the unbreakable, but no, I'm glad we got what we got. And in typical fashion, I'm sure Gainax stretched itself to the limit with what we did get.
That's one, maybe at some point in the future that we will have to do. Have you ever seen Die Buster?
No, I've not, actually.
Die Buster is one of the best Gainax anime ever made. Oh, phenomenally done. I like it more than Gunbuster, which I'm sure will have me be crucified by some people, but it shows up so much in, the aughts, and it is absolutely worthy to be talked about in line with, especially Mahoramatic, but Evangelion as well.
I bet Fooly Cooly. I bet people would know from there.
Yeah. Well, actually, it was pre Fooly Cooly, or it was after Fooly Cooly. It was the first one after Fooly Cooly. Die Buster was, but this is something else too that I thought was incredibly interesting. This was actually the impetus for part of this episode. Was I had really wanted to talk about this because even back in the day, this was a big deal. Because Takamiya Kai was one of the founders of Gainax. And this particular image is also hard to get a hold of for a number of reasons, obviously, that is said in the episode. But, like, just the fact that, so many people were like, the animation's not that good. And that apparently got to a couple of people at Gainax pretty hard.
It's something like that is obviously, I mean, even for us, it's kind of, I'd like to think we're not the TMZ of the anime world, but, something where, it just had juicy and scandalous written all over. You had these big figures sounding like, like any
Any normal
any
person.
kid on the internet or YouTuber, getting upset about people, and that's sometimes lost in the scope of it all. I think, because these are human beings like you and me, and putting a lot of work into this stuff, and so there's something to be said about. Obviously, you got to be professional and all that, but that's gonna hurt if you pour your soul into something and then somebody goes, eh.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this was something else too that I thought was really cool. This is one of those first instances of, the internet happening, and they were like, "Well, let's open up the internet. What would they do?" Well, what was the biggest anime in 2007? Gurren Lagann. So why wouldn't you want the
man? That's just gonna
the seal of the Gurren Brigade on it.
That has legend written all over it. That's gonna be legendary for a long time. Anonymous of Norway. Man, and of course, if anyone has ever met Kyle at a convention or something, I have. I'm sure many people have, because he's so amicable. He's so amiable. Maybe that's the word I'm looking for. Anyway, he's a nice guy. He's such a cool guy, and he always makes time for all of it.
I wrote that in there specifically for him to say that, because that was for me. I popped for that one.
Man, that's so cool. This, of course, I as we do this now in years hindsight now as of this recording, it's almost funny how I've almost forgotten, but there was a time when, every other comment was, do Attack on Titan. Oh, you gotta do Attack on Titan. Oh, can you guys do Attack on Titan? Which,
Hey, I mean, it's one of the biggest anime of the last 10 years, so.
Valid request, so we were... I had been wanting to do this one for a while, I think. I don't know if it's one that goes in our quote-unquote vault, but I remember wanting to do it for a while, and then it just happened quite serendipitously, I guess.
I really liked the how at the beginning of the video here we were talking about how, like, Shueisha was like, well, you could do Attack on Titan, but it has to, basically be more of these shonen tropes that everybody associates with the big three, and he was like, nah. And naturally, when Kodansha saw it, they were like, oh my god, please. Oh my god, we will absolutely take it. Because, I mean, they were smart. They saw it. They saw how big that was going to be.
I cracked up. Saw that the first time. And, I mean, it's probably like you hear about all the publishers that turned down J.K. Rowling and Harry Potter, and it's just like...
But they're regretting that now.
Yep.
But I mean, that's also kind of nice too. They've got there's competition. You don't just have to go through one way. You can go somewhere else if you believe in me that believes in you, that you're good enough to do that.
This really struck me. I remember, and we tag teamed the script, if I recall, and I was so struck by Attack on Titan. I was watching it when it was coming out, and I was blogging then. I'm still blogging as of this recording, and I was like, I just gotta get some words out there about this. And I was surprised at that time, this was like 2013, no one, at least in the English speaking world, nobody had really commented on the whole Hebrew motifs in there, so that was kind of fun to quote unquote break. But speaking of fun, this was kind of uh-oh territory.
I mean, this would be kind of, I guess you'd say like tantamount to putting, like, what, Hitler in an army and being like, he was this great, or somebody who looks like him and exactly like him, and then saying he's this great person and he's the leader of this whatever. Maybe like a
Civil War general, or like a Confederate general in America,
or just anything, especially of the German army or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like saying he was this great general. I'm sure the Koreans were not happy about that.
That was interesting, and again, one of those satisfying things that we get to do so often was letting people know. I watched the sub, and so I was very much used to 3D maneuvering gear, but that change was not arbitrary, and it was not their choice.
One of the other things that I really like about this was not the choice of Funimation. They were told this by the Japanese company, and that's something that a lot of people forget. They think, I mean, to be fair, sometimes it is. It very much is. But other times, it's very much the Japanese company says, no, we want this to be that. So,
a little thing on the end there, that kind of blew me away. I had no idea until we were doing the script. I remember being like, what? And it does seem kind of odd.
Well, I mean, they were the two hottest things at the time. So, I mean, I will say, though, I wasn't a huge fan of how the Titans just kind of get dispatched super easy. Because, I mean, you always want everybody to be evenly matched. And if people aren't evenly matched, then it's like, well, what's the point of doing a crossover? It's called Attack on Avengers, not, the Avengers featuring some Titans from Attack on Titan,
And this was the first one for Patreon, actually, remembering now.
It was. This was right after the Patreon started. And I just, I want to thank everybody real quick who has been a patron. Mr. Ben Barker has been there since day one.
He believed in us.
He is an OG, exactly. He is the man.
And Steven, put him in more of your stuff.
Exactly.
Put him in more of your stuff, internet people. This was immensely gratifying, as so many of them are, but man, getting Richard Epcar to do this.
I mean, he is one of the coolest dudes. He's one of the coolest voice actors I've ever met. He's a phenomenal dude.
I think to this day, like, or at least I remember the time, if you like do a Google search of Masamune Shirow,
you'll get like one of his producers or editors,
somebody.
Like that.
I don't even know, completely unrelated. I'm not sure, but so yeah, you still won't, find I'd sooner believe somebody had a picture of Bigfoot than
pretty much
Masamune Shirow.
This is something else I really like. There's a lot of people, they like to, like, Kokaku Kidotai was created from Ghost in the Shell, not the other way around. And so Ghost in the Shell, as it is in English, is originally how it was in Shiro's head. A lot of people will think, like, if an English person did that with a Japanese title, they're like, oh, that's so cringeworthy. But it's like, no, the Japanese have been doing that for decades. Like, it only comes up like that in the manga because they wanted it to sell more in Japan. So it's a very interesting little tidbit.
No kidding. I also really like, you see in that, I'm glad you put up the picture of the actual thing, because for people who do quick translations out there for anything, obviously professionals know what they're doing, but if you're just using, Google Translate or whatever, if you put in Kokaku Kidotai as of still, it'll come up with Mobile Armored Riot Police, which is not a literal translation of what that is. Like, they had in parentheses Shell Squad. Like, that's more accurate than anything you're going to see. So sometimes Google, it's an amalgamation of what people put into it. It's not this all-knowing orb, even though we...
Well, I mean, and they even ask people, like, do you have a better translation? So
this was just fun writing this. I remember writing this because you're just kind of like that feeling you get in academia, or if you're a music person or whatever your craft is, you're just like quote unquote a part of the conversation with people who have gone before, people who are long dead from centuries ago. And so we're talking about this now and, connecting all of these philosophers who were building off of each other. That was just so cool. As was this. I didn't even... I remember seeing this part in the movie and being like, oh, she was interesting. I wonder, is she going to be prominent later? And spoilers...
She was real.
Really wasn't. I was like, oh, that was weird. I was like, am I missing something here? And sure enough, that's the reason why. That's as big of a title it is. I still think Ghost in the Shell Innocence is underrated, especially compared to most of the other installments of this multifaceted franchise. It's a great film for anyone who's not had the pleasure. And I believe we didn't get to it in this script. Maybe we will in another one, people listening. But I think Richard Epcar himself was really instrumental in getting a proper dub version for Ghost in the Shell to Innocence. You know,
he was a big part of it.
So that just showed you there, like it's a job for him. He's professional, obviously, but
you found this part, right?
He obviously
the golem thing.
He obviously cared about it more as well. But this was and you kind of get a little bit of that from watching the second film. But yeah, I just remember from some other stories and written works, and so did a little more digging. And I said, that's really interesting. And then I think that's kind of when we started articulating, a lot of that section was religious stuff. There's a lot of that in
that's
Ghost in the Shell.
That's Mamoru Oshii. That's in his playbook, like hardcore. He loves to put all kinds of symbolism in there. Which, obviously, I think that made Ghost in the Shell what it is today. If it hadn't have been Mamoru Oshii, I don't think it would have taken off the way it did. It still would have been big.
And sadly, I think, I think he would have been crucified for it today because people
absolutely
going, that's not exactly.
Oh,
like
they
the
would
manga.
have. You can't really get away with that anymore.
And it's kind of sad, but
some of the modern epics that we've had, quote unquote modern, from the late 20th century, like people they would not let a filmmaker do that today unless he did it as an independent.
Oh yeah, Samurai Champloo had a brief run on Netflix, I recall. Either the summer of doing this or the summer before. I don't remember which, because I think this was 2015. Well, this is probably fall of 2015 when these were coming out. Lord knows when we were.
This one probably
this
would have been around that, but no, yeah, the script could have been a whole year beforehand.
I remember listening to commentaries on other stuff, DVDs and movies I like, and sometimes they say things like that, like, oh, I don't remember when I was doing this, and I thought as a youngster, like, how could you not remember? How could you not know every little detail? And I kind of get it
now. You get it now, yeah, when you're working on something so much for so long, yeah.
Doesn't mean I don't love it, doesn't mean we don't love it, but it just kind of happens. I was a little late to the game seeing Champloo. I saw some of it, back when it was, of course, there was much hype to be had. Shinichiro Watanabe's name, has a knack of doing that. And, but when I first watched it, and then when I finally got to really sit down and post film school watch it, I was so impressed by it.
I first started watching Champloo on Adult Swim when it first popped up, because I remember it was kind of in that mid-era, right as the boom period was going down, and it was a nice little change of pace, because it's Shinichiro Watanabe. Like, you're very rarely gonna find something from Shinichiro Watanabe that you don't like. If you can find something from him that's not good, you found what's the reverse of a diamond in a rough?
Whatever that is, that's what that would be.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess we don't have a saying for that. This was interesting too, because in typical Watanabe fashion, it's very much a mixture, a fusion, and we've said it before, recorded or not, and I'm sure many people are aware of this, but Bebop resonated so much because it had all these European filmic callbacks, inspirations, and of course cowboys, Americana, all of that, whereas Champloo was a lot more Japanese rooted.
Yeah.
But I think he did a great job with that as well. Rest in peace, Studio Manglobe, right?
Yep.
Gosh,
they're gone.
that was shortly after this came out, if I recall. I remember this coming out and then people being like, "Rest in peace."
That's right.
And I was like, "What?"
Not Samurai Champloo for anybody who's listening, but like when we released this video,
yeah.
that was when Mangla was in the midst of doing. I think they were working on Gangsta. They were like 3 or 4 episodes in, and then they were like, "Nope, we're done." And it's like, wow. Especially with a show like Gangsta, which so many people were, really enjoying and was doing really well. I always like when they do stuff like this, whenever they like stuff that Westerners would just look at and they're like, oh, that's kind of funny, like this really goofy looking guy, but then they're like, oh, this is actually like a direct reference to this dude who's known for being really goofy and overtly sexual, and it's like a Japanese goofy Steven Seagal.
That was weird looking into. I looked into those films, and they just have a. In addition to the subject matter, they have a tone about them. It's just very odd. I found this was also really interesting to study and research. And how about that? I remember in the dub, this character here was, I believe, Richard Epcar. So how about that?
Yeah, how about that?
Didn't even mean to do that. But that's, of course, very interesting history of, sadly, what you see all over the globe at different points in history is indigenous people getting pushed aside. And
it's crazy when you look at the histories and just how Japan and America came up. Both came up very isolationist. Both have a very distinct North and South, which of themselves are very, they parallel each other very well. The killing of the indigenous people, all of that. It's crazy how different the cultures are, and yet how similar both of them progressed.
This is crazy.
Oh, yeah, this was nuts.
I read this somewhere, and then I was just like, I'm going to keep an eye out for that. And then, I mean, I wouldn't blame anyone for that just going by, because he's not there for very long, but the references, they are not hiding it at all.
Oh, I mean,
you throw a picture up like that, man.
Well, I mean, sometimes some of those are just so blatantly obvious that when people go, well, I don't know, I'm like, you know what, you legitimately have the right to say that, but like, I have a picture that is almost identical to Andy Warhol, like
Uharo Andy, and it's just like, try saying Andy Warhol in a Japanese dialect, and all of a sudden, wow, thank you, Nino, that was fantastic job.
Steins Gate, here's a good one. I really, the whole impetus for me working on this episode was the idea, because I'm very unabashedly, I like watching conspiracy theories. I don't believe in conspiracy theories. I just think they're really cool. It's like watching Game of Thrones for me. But no. Also, here's an aside. Nobody knows how to say John Titor's name. The Japanese say Titor because T-I is pronounced T. John Titor wasn't real. So, how do you pronounce someone's name who wasn't real? But this is actually a really cool concept, because it's like they followed this. Steins Gate's plot is so directly connected to this like conspiracy theory thing that happened that it's like I wanted to make a point of showing people like how in depth this was. It wasn't just like the Japanese found this little thing and then expounded on it. Like they really went the distance with connecting it to this.
It's really something when I mean, not saying, just saying, but like one of the most quote unquote critically acclaimed anime of the modern age, and its story is pretty much lifted.
It's lifted. Like literally they took the story of John Titor and then like inserted anime characters and like an overarching plot for the characters, but it's settled on the idea that one of the people who was talking to John Titor in the past was these people from Steins Gate. And so that's just kind of like a, I find it very cool and very comical, because, do You can have time travel. We can have so much fun with that, but I don't think any of the other semicolon anime have had nearly as much success as Steins Gate did.
No, I think that's pretty safe to say.
Very cool.
And I gotta say, time travel, if done right, or at least you have fun with it. But here, I mean, if done right, I gotta admit, I got a soft spot for it. I think a lot of people do. It's just great sci-fi fodder.
I think one of the things too is like it's also very like Western sci-fi because you're talking about like Back to the Future. You're talking about the Time Machine, H.G. Wells. You're talking about stuff that this Steins Gate hit a Western audience that Bebop couldn't hit, but was still in the same realm. It hit that like super sci-fi thing that like a traditional space western didn't hit because it was so like, I guess, concentrated on that one particular aspect of it that we could really associate with in the same way as we would something like Back to the Future, which they even reference in here with a number of different references in this point. They say the male that leapt through time, referencing the girl who leapt through time, back to the male, Back to the Future, DeLorean male named after the DeLorean.
Just in case we didn't.
Just in case you didn't
somehow.
You didn't understand where they were coming from, and then of course a number of dub-inspired in jokes and whatnot. Which I actually thought this was kind of cool that Ashley Birch, who is known for writing for Valve, and I think she worked at Gearbox, or maybe her brother did. There's a little Gabe Newell.
I saw that.
Lots of people found that one. But it's just really cool that she actually, one of her first forays into anime voice acting was a critically acclaimed series like Steins Gate.
Man. And, maybe one of the reasons, and good on it, maybe one of the reasons it was so popular and well received is because, almost in a weird way, I remember we were saying this about, like, One Punch Man. I don't think that's this, maybe it is. Anyway, with One Punch Man, I was saying when that was coming out, it's like when you haven't had that for so long, and it's something different, and something, some animes thrown at you after so much moe and stuff, you're like, oh my god. And so I remember we were talking, seems like just the other day, but it could have been who knows how long ago, but we were just talking about how it's crazy how we all thought going into the new millennium you'd think there would be more sci-fi stuff.
Oh yeah,
and there really
actually went backwards.
A whole lot. Yeah. And then something comes along that is good sci-fi, and people eat it up, and that's awesome.
Oh, they also went the extra mile too, and of course, a shout out to the good old Stoner 420 Bongmaster and Daniel Calix.
Thank you.
But they really went the extra mile too because they had that like the dome thing that looked like it hit the building, and they because when a company does that, the difference between that and like somebody just promoting something is drastic because it's like right there, it's like right in the popular, thought process.
Well done, Arcata. We'll probably just thank everybody at the end again, so no one's left out. This was, I think I can speak for both of us, a personal treat. To do one like this, because we're not old men yet, but Mike and I are getting there to where like Steins Gate is kind of a newer anime, and people shake their heads at us, but something like early AIC, Bubblegum Crisis, Hiroki Hayashi, Toshimiki Suzuki, all of that is a little bit more in our wheelhouse, a little bit more in our comfort zone.
Well, and even getting back Cinda to do this, like, this was one of those special ones. It's like I really wanted to get somebody who had worked on the show. I'd actually asked Robert Woodhead first, the guy who runs, right. But he declined, and so I said, "All right, I'm gonna go for the gold on this one," and I think I got there.
I might as well. He politely declined, other things going on and all of that. But a major shout out for Anime Goat because I have their DVD set from who knows when, that one right there actually. And so, all of these quotes and stuff we have on there is back in my day when they used to.
Well, another shout out to Anime Go is they take almost all their liner notes for a lot of their stuff is up on the internet. A lot of their extra features were phenomenal. Stuff like this, where you don't get that today. You want to talk about one of those things that I believe truly was back in my day was anime extras. A lot of these digital anime episodes for classic anime exist because of those extras. Exist because, people weren't just going on Netflix and watching it. They were watching special features and making of, and the Akira report, really delving into it. It wasn't just, something you'd read on Reddit.
Mm-hmm. I remember that Asia Go thing. That was, I don't know if that was anywhere. It probably is by now. It might have been written somewhere. I'm sure somebody noticed it, but I just remember reading the quotes, and they didn't mention the specific song, and just that was kind of fun having the internet at my disposal and getting to say, wait a minute, so they're describing music video, and I think they said the group. They said it was a band. I think it was called Asia, and so then I and I'm like, I just had to look through music videos, and when I saw for Go, I went, there it is. That's a hard suit if I've ever seen it, and this was great. Getting to do this side by side because that was written somewhere, the Streets of Fire bit, and then you again internet pull it up. Oh my God, there it is. And I think you caught the Blade Runner stuff,
yep,
which is ridiculous. How many things in Japan and the West that is inspired? Like, it's ridiculous.
Well, I mean, we just got done with Steins Gate, how that was based off of one little thing, but like a big chunk of Bubblegum Crisis was them looking at Streets of Fire and like, all right, I want to make an entire episode kind of maybe not centered around it, but like that was a big impetus for it. Like the idea of coming together for it was, looking at something like Streets of Fire. And, I know that, maybe a whole lot of people will not appreciate this, but I'm sure we will come back to Bubblegum Crisis at one point that we're talking about all the people who are associated with it, but you wrote like 1,500 words in the first original script just because there's so much stuff in there. It's so thick. And each of the directors for Bubblegum Crisis had wanted to do their own thing, and the producer somehow found a way to connect all of that story together and make it the classic that it is.
And speaking of being crucified, and I won't go too far down that road, but it's like when you really look at it critically, and I love the original Bubblegum Crisis, I love it, but when you look at it critically, that is exactly what's going on. Is each episode is like they're markedly different from one another, and then Tokyo 2040 was where Hiroki Hayashi, Tenchi Muyo, El Hazard later on, and worked on the original, got to helm that, and AIC, and so people who had worked on the original said, now we have a chance for a more coherent and a more drawn out story. And I mean, so I won't say the blasphemy of, oh, it's better, but you know what I mean? I mean, it's like pick your measuring rod. The animation of the OVAs, I mean, they're OVAs, so they're gorgeous.
They're supposed to have a bigger budget.
And this one was on TV, but it's still, I guess, I like that 90s aesthetic anyway. And it had a way more developed, in-depth story. The OVAs really didn't have much in the way of story.
Well, talking about, you want to talk about how big that was. Apparently, Matt Greenfield, the co-founder and probably the guy in charge at ADV at that time, he must have seen how popular it was because he was the guy right behind the money, that he thought that he wanted to co-produce ADV to have co-produce a sequel to 2040 called 2041. So it obviously was popular. Funimation has re-released it a couple different times.
It's also crazy. I remember nobody else had really commented on the Big Hero 6 look-alike there. And the guy I can't remember if he was the director or the art designer or something, and his name escapes me right now, but I couldn't find directly for Bubblegum Crisis, but almost everything else he was like listing off. Appleseed, Shiro as inspirational, Kira Toriyama as inspirational. And
Well, I mean, all you have to do is look at that suit and then look at one of the hard suits that like Pris is wearing, and it's like, okay, that's incredibly obvious.
And I'm not hating on him.
No, I mean, it is what it is.
Man, then another voice actor.
Yeah.
Right after that, I got to briefly meet Mr. Paul St. Peter in Fargo, North Dakota, actually. Nice little town. Had a nice little convention there. And I tell you, it was me and some other people there. And we were grabbing some food or something before somebody had a panel or something to go to. And I remember commenting on this, and that he's not only a accomplished voice actor, but he's actually like a legitimate linguist. He's really good with dialects and all that stuff for a myriad of languages, and he gets consulted on various projects for that all the time. And so he was talking about all this kind of stuff, and he had this look about him. If you can Google search his look, and I thought I was in one of those most interesting man in the world commercials, but it was for anime. Like, he is the most interesting man in anime.
This was actually something that I really liked and that I really wanted to talk about. And I'm still shocked to this day that Seishi Kishimoto Parts Hunter 666 Satan has not been made into an anime. I legitimately thought when Naruto ended or Shippuden ended that they were going to do something with this, because it's perfect. The brother of Masashi Kishimoto, he's got a manga that's fit for that. Nobody's seen it. People have talked about it, obviously, but maybe this was also one of the reasons that he didn't, because early on people were like, oh, you're copying Naruto. He's like, the creator of Naruto is my twin brother, it would not be a far stretch to say that they grew up and obviously had the same influences. So they're twins, of course. They're going to probably draw very similarly. Mm-hmm. I just like the name 666 Satan. That's badass.
I wonder if whoever's behind the purse strings of certain production company that might likely happen in the future isn't just like,
I'm sure it'll happen at some point.
Probably just keeping it in the back pocket.
They'll probably call it Parts Hunter just to be safe and PC, but I would like to see it say that. This was pretty cool. Got the Japanese rock paper scissors, basically.
Yeah, I'm sure. I guess this would probably be something really obvious to Japanese viewers, more so than non-Japanese viewers, but that really was cool.
There, I think it's kind of funny how they have like these animals for it, and they're like, oh yes, a frog and a toad and a snake, and we're like, rock, thing that smash, thing that cut, I draw on paper. Like,
it's kind of funny. I never thought of that. I'm also glad that I think we did a good job with communicating here that things like the nine-tailed fox, kitsune, been around forever in Japanese culture. So obviously Kishimoto drew from that, but he also explicitly was saying that he was also inspired, though, by Yoshihiro Togashi and Yu Yu Hakusho, and his character specifically, which, if you recall from our episode on it, we explained the origins of things like the kitsune and all of that. So, and of course, Akira Toriyama love there as well. I think that I like it when creators do that, a little tip of the hat, pay it forward kind of thing, because then someday there's going to be some hot new thing and they're going to go, oh, I was inspired by Masashi Kishimoto or Naruto, and the cycle continues.
This was something I thought was also pretty cool, because we'd actually talked with Jeff Nimoy, who had worked on adapting it. I think he directed the first season of Naruto. He was the ADR guy, if I'm remembering correctly. But there is, they had tried to come up with all these different sayings that he could say, or like he even said that the Japanese company, they wanted to have believe it like in the middle of the sentence, and they were like fighting them like, no, you cannot put it in the middle of the sentence, it will not come off right. And I obviously I think believe it was the best way to go, because if you say believe it, everybody's like Naruto, like, so I mean, yeah. And people can wince at that, but I think you've done your job of making something lasting if people remember it that fondly, or infamously they remember it. That's the important part.
And yeah, people who haven't even watched Naruto know that.
Oh yeah.
And that was the last of the
big three.
Hard to believe we're now in a post-Big Three era.
Oh, man.
Here we go.
Oh, God. I'd wanted to do this episode for so long.
I'll just go ahead and, at least from my standpoint, I'll admit it. This was one where I was actually nervous about. I was anxious.
Oh, yeah. No, I was scared to death. I mean, it's ironic that I should have been, I guess I should have been more scared with Gundam. But, no, I was scared to death that Ava Geeks or Ava Monkey was going to come out and rip me a new a-hole if I got something wrong. But, I think it's very interesting to see, like, kind of the origin of Ava, and ironically enough, how Sadamoto, of all people, was like, no, this is how I think it should go, and this is how it should be, and the lead character should be a boy, and, how that whole genesis happened. And then of course there's this funny picture right here, the Sadamoto drew. It's like, just basically draw Nadia as a boy,
and you're golden.
And you've got Shinji.
Yeah, Ava is one of those. There's for anyone tempted to think an episode on this would be easy, there's so much stuff out there about it, but here's the kicker. Ava's one of those that, like, people have, and some of it's just for fun, and it's the internet, I get it, but the thing about Ava is, like, it's one of those things it has such an aura about it now that you could almost make up, like, anything outlandish.
And people would believe it.
Yeah, they'd believe it. Like, did you know that Anno
and in some cases
used a bullwhip to get better performances out of the actors?
Well, I mean, he used his hands, not a bullwhip, but it legitimately, though, you say that, but that actually happens. There are certain channels that will literally just take some of the facts that I've looked at, that I've seen, that I've debunked, but they still take, even though they don't have a source for it, simply because it's Ava. Mm-hmm. They think it sounds outlandish enough that they just go with it. This is something I thought was really cool, was they had this, like, place called the Ancient Ruins of Arca, which has never been shown. It's never come up anywhere. It's not in the manga. And it might be in the last Ava movie.
Speaking of Sadamoto and creative duos, how about that? But isn't that funny? Hindsight's 2020 and can be a bitch sometimes, I guess. But sorry, I don't know if this is a G-rated.
Well, I think you could say that in a PG movie. Say it once.
But he gets to now kind of be like, in hindsight, like, oh yeah, and you said,
what was that? Oh no, what did I?
You said Evangelion was kind of stupid for a title, and yet here we are. This was just, I just smile watching this whole.
A lot of people. Section. I think there's... Oh, well, first off, if you don't know Ikuhara, he is a master troll. Like, he loves to play with people because he can. Because people will take what he says at face value. So he's come to be known in that way. Like saying, oh, well, I would receive complaints from fans if they said I was the model. Kaoru is so good looking and blah, blah, blah.
Wink, wink.
But, actually him and Anno were incredibly close. And they probably still are to this day. And I think that Kaoru was the model for, or that Ikuhara was the model for Kaoru? Probably. I wouldn't be surprised if Anno had him in mind. Was he directly? Like that's such a hard thing with Ava. Like, what was the one thing? It's like, well, it's a Kynax show. There's probably not just one thing most of the time. But I thought it was something worthy of being talked about because, oftentimes forgotten, but he did have a big influence on Anno.
I love how here Spike was comfortable enough to do this, and I'm glad you kept it in, obviously, and stuff. And I guess people don't always know this, but we write scripts, and then people read those scripts. but stuff like when you talk about the end of Ava there, and or no, the TV show, into the TV show, and people being frustrated and confused, and Spike just added in, it's not just me then. How about that? Like, I love that.
Well, one of the things that I really wanted to put in there is everybody comes down on End of Ava and is like, oh, well, it's so negative. It's like, but not everybody looks at it that way. Some people were really happy because they could associate with it. And I mean, the reason that I put this quote at the end is, I told you as soon as I found this quote, I said, this is going to be at the end of the video because I feel like people need to see that, because so many people are like, they want to have the answer. Well, there is no answer. Like, that's a true work of art, like the Mona Lisa, like the Sistine Chapel, like anything else. There is no answer. Anybody can go in there and get something out of it. There's not somebody standing there, an usher going, this is the meaning of the Sistine Chapel. Like, nobody says that. Because that's asinine. Like, that's not... It's supposed to be interpreted however you want to interpret it. It's like a play. 10 people can go into a play, and they'll have 10 different experiences, even though they watch the same thing. Doesn't mean that all 10 experiences are wrong or right. It just is what it is. Oh, and then this little bit at the end here, I had that. That was another one that as soon as he said, "Don't kill your date," I'm like, I'm putting that in there.
Oh man, I think I'm gonna take credit for that one. I remember being like, "Dude, do you think we should?" And you were like, "Yeah, we're doing
we
that."
should.
Oh, another one of these quote unquote depressing episodes.
Oh yeah, the unreleased anime.
Because they are, in a way, because you go, there's this build up. There really is. Even for us watching this, and but knowing at the end it's going to be, unfortunately, blah 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 something, and it's never going to see the light of day, and you're like, oh, but I wanted to. I mean,
honestly, I'm more depressed for Mahiro Maeda because he's such a great artist, and he has such a good idea. He's a high concept guy, and if you have people who are really good with high concept, their art is so phenomenal. But he has the Gonzo curse. Like, Gonzo's had so many anime fail under him that it's like you have all of these great, cool concepts, but then it's like, what happens to them? Nothing. They end up going under, and that's such a, it's like one of those curse type things that you'll be a great artist and you be like no other, but how many things are you actually going to go through and do?
Deal with the devil kind of thing.
Yeah.
There's a twist. This was very, very satisfying to get to throw this in here, because these were, one, fairly new developments, and two, as I think we probably indicated on season 1 commentary, maybe at some panels and here and there. That's where Mike and I got our start with anime fandom. That's where we met each other. We pretty much know it all and have looked into. I mean, there's still things that need uncovering, sadly, but Tenchi Muyo is our jam, I should say, and so when Tenchi Muyo was coming out, we had our fingers on the pulse of this, like literally as it was happening.
Oh yeah,
and then seeing Negishi saying that on Twitter, like seeing that the day of or a couple days after he tweeted it, and putting these pieces together and going, what? Excuse me?
Well, that's the part that blew my... That's the part I'd almost debated on whether or not I wanted to put this in an episode, another Tenchi Muyo episode, or just put it in unreleased anime, just because, like, in the age of social media, how many times do you have a director just come out of the blue because nobody had ever talked about it, nobody knew about it. It, for all intents and purposes, it did not exist. And then all of a sudden, Negishi gets on Twitter and is like, oh yeah, we were going to do a movie 5 years ago. And it's like...
I'm sorry.
What?
Back up? What?
What? That's here we go, the Gonzo Curse. This was going to be their 15th anniversary anime. this is an anime that's supposed to be a showcase, and it ended up failing. So
I think you've said that enough times. I think you're gonna make that a thing out there.
I hope so. I mean, I'm sure it may not have been called the Gonzo Curse before, but I'm sure some people have had the same thought
There's
process.
something there, which is too bad.
And eventually they did. I don't remember what the other company was that ended up making it's like 2 or 3 movies or something. But Murdoch Scramble ended up coming out in one form or another. But I always I always want to see anime when they're made by, like, in the past, just because they have a different feel. It's like Hunter x Hunter 99 versus Hunter x Hunter 2011. Like, even though they're the same anime following the same script for all intents and purposes, they have a radically different feel to them just because of when they were made. And then, of course, this one I had to put in here because, even though nothing truly exists of it, minus this one interview that was in Kinema Junpo, the idea that Mamoru Oshii might have been a part of Studio Ghibli ongoing would have been,
Got such big names that, Oshii and Studio Ghibli, and yet, nobody knows practically anything. And it's almost like, I'm very ignorant of this, but it's almost like when scientists or astronomers are explaining how they see a black hole or something. It's like, well, you can't actually see it, but you can see the gravity around it, and it's kind of the absence of it is how that there was something there, and or like antimatter or dark matter or something like that. And like that's the weird thing you have here, because it just absolutely does not exist. And so obviously that's the appeal, but then you have next to nothing.
And this was something else I wanted to put in there, that how Oshii was like, yeah, Studio Ghibli is run like the Kremlin. But no, I mean, this would have happened. This might have been the first Studio Ghibli film had Oshii not backed out, and Castle in the Sky wouldn't have been. I mean, I know everybody says Nausicaa is the first, but it's not really. It's the proof of concept that Studio Ghibli could be a thing. But I thought that was very cool that they were looking at doing that.
It is. And I can see, obviously, a word like Kremlin that catches people's attention, but I could see somebody like Oshii who does, I do what I want, like, and being in this rigid setting, it just being like oil and water, like, nope, it ain't gonna.
Well, and I think I think that Oshii and Miyazaki are of the same mindset a lot too. I think that's also why it didn't work. Oh, this one was all you.
That's right. This was season 3. My gosh. I have a friend to thank for introducing me to Azumanga Daioh. Like Hitalia in a way, it's one of those, like, it's not my bread and butter, so to speak. So I probably wouldn't have sought it out on my own, but I enjoyed it, and the timing of it, of Azumanga Daioh itself, especially the anime, as we get to, and you did a great job with the clips and stuff, is that, like, the nascent internet as we know it now, with all the forums and what have you. This anime is the wellspring of so many different things. It's crazy. It is. And you have people, or even younger people, kids who are aware of, like, the meme or the trope or the what have you. Like, my waifu. Everybody who's into anime, or even
they say
on
the word internet, waifu like it's no big deal.
That
came from Azumanga Daioh.
And it's one of those things you're like, what do you mean there is an origin to that? That wasn't always just there.
No, it had an origin. In fact, there was like a big chunk of the early memes, or before they were even really called memes, was from Azumanga Daioh and 4chan and 2chan. Like, that's we can almost all put all of that on Azumanga Daioh's shoulders. And it's crazy to think about, too, because, something so simple like Azumanga Daioh could be,
I think, as with so many things, it's not to talk down other works or this specific work or anything, but it's a lot of it's serendipity and comes down to timing. Like we were just saying, to where it got to be something through gifts and pictures and stuff like that. It's something that was really shared a lot. And so you had this, we need a communications major to explain it, but the way that shared communal sense that people get when you share a meme and stuff like that. And of course, Manga just had a lot of fun little references of its own. Like here, I remember the manga had a different celebrity reference. I don't remember who it was, but I guess it's just because the anime came out a few years later. They're like, oh, we'll get somebody more current. And then that was a good way you made that analogy for people to kind of understand. Like a $2 bill, nobody goes, oh my god, $2 whole. Wow. It's not the amount, it's wow, a $2 bill.
Yeah,
you don't see those every ding dong day. I didn't even mean to do that. Ding dong. Gosh,
this is kind of a cool little thing too, how they were like Unko and Chinko, which were people were like, oh, why is she doing that? She's being annoying. But it's like, no, she was saying poop and dick a lot.
And another fun thing for Manga with me, it's like, it's crazy how the relationship between Yomi and Tomo, that one being immature and another one being like, oh, what's it, like, I had two guy friends like that in college, and it's just hilarious. I get to look on the outside being like, wow, these animated little Japanese girls resemble my 20-something friends.
Yeah.
And how crazy is that? And thank you all there. Of course, the enigmatic stoner bomb master. Man, that was fun. I think it was just after this, running into Goomba somewhere. It was at a convention.
Yep,
that's fun. Can be like, hey,
Minneapolis.
Goomba, thanks, man, for doing this.
This was one that I really enjoyed doing because Parasite is one of my favorite horror manga. And, this right here, just the idea that Studio Ghibli, in particular, Hayao Miyazaki, was like, I want to turn Parasite into a movie. And it's like, it's much like Anchor we talked about. It's like, that's something that, they had primarily focused on, other like Western children's books, like European ones, and not like other properties that people had done. And unfortunately, it never got to happen because apparently New Line Cinema at some point thought they were going to make a Parasite movie and then never did. And I guess we can thank them for that, because we ended up getting a TV series come out later and kind of bring Parasite back into the popular medium. And then I think it was Dark Horse or Yen Press. I think it was Dark Horse that re-released the manga, and then we got live action movies. So, a series that's over at that point had been 20 years old, 22 years old, got a kind of a second lease on life a little bit.
And kind of like how we were saying before about how you notice something by an absence of something, or here it's kind of vice versa. It's like all of a sudden you have, boom, couple movies, boom, anime, and that's where you go, well, somebody's license is expired.
Yeah, something.
Right.
Well, I mean, that's how Japan does it all the time. As soon as a license goes up somewhere, they can do it. This huge explosion of stuff. And this was cool too, because like I said, we're talking about a manga that came out in the mid to late 80s, so they had to modernize everything. And even then, Parasite has a special place in American manga history because it was one of the first to be printed left to right, as opposed to right to left.
Mm-hmm.
And so they had to flip everything. And I like his Misery Confusion shirt, and I want a Misery Confusion shirt. But,
I think that was really fun. How I hope, that
Lefty,
no one messes with righty. But how, if you have a favorite manga series or something like that, there's hope that it could get new life. Who knows how many years. And it's fun that a lot of people who liked the anime got to watch this or learn from somewhere else had no idea that the manga was that old. I mean, they probably, nowadays people are safe in presuming, oh, there was probably a manga before, and this is probably an adaptation.
But it's usually not like 20 years later.
But yeah, then so you've got to update everything.
This was a cool little thing that I believe it's the director of the movie had said. How he was like, James Cameron knew about Parasite, and so he took some of the things from the Parasites and then put that in the T-1000, which, I mean, that's actually... I mean, that wouldn't have been... He wouldn't have had a whole lot of time to do that, though, because, Terminator 2 came out in, 91, 92, and the Parasite manga had come out in 88, 87, so, obviously it's just a rumor, probably had nothing to do with anything, but it's a cool little thing that the Japanese were like, I think he might have seen Parasite, or that they would have thought when they saw Terminator 2 in Japan, they were like, did they copy Parasite?
Hey, I think that's, and I hope people notice how careful we were about that the fact is, there was this rumor going around, and an actual, someone of high profile, so to speak, in the overall franchise, what the film directors, live action adaptation saying that. So I saw people disagreeing and stuff in the comments, and more power to him, because he could be totally wrong, but he was just saying, well, that was a rumor that was going around at that time, and that is a fact. So those awkward high school days.
I like how they changed that for the manga, where they're not like sitting in a public cafe and he gets a dick hand. they actually kind of like hid him somewhere so they could get away with hiding the dick, which they didn't show on Toonami, which we saw from the comments when Parasite ran on Toonami. Which, I mean, how are they going to get away with showing a dick on Toonami?
No way. All of a sudden, I'm glad I tend to sleep with earplugs in.
Yeah.
after you even hear the premise of Parasite, you're like, oh.
It's a great manga. If you ever get a chance, you should go through and read it.
Yeah, I would like to read the manga.
And of course, Liz did a fantastic job.
She has a lovely voice.
She could be a narrator and or a voice actor. She has the voice for it.
I was not familiar with her before we approached her with this, so that was fun. Oh, speaking of One Punch,
the finale to season 3, One Punch Man.
I'm glad we were able to do this, because for a number of different reasons, we're probably never gonna be like the first to do videos about like the newest upcoming currently airing anime. So but this one we were pretty close for this one. It's still fairly new, and
we weren't that far behind.
And there was a lot to say about it, though. Even its whole origin story is pretty unique.
He just used it as a way to play around with. I mean, it says Comic Studio, but that was just a translation of the quote, which is probably Manga Studio, but obviously Manga Comics. But I mean, look at that, like 20,000 visitors, unique visitors a day. Like, that is a lot of people looking at that little comic,
And it's a nice, hopefully inspirational to people, and shows you we're in a new era with the internet. You can get your stuff out there, and get some steam behind it, and get people's eyeballs on it, and it can get some fuel behind it. You never know.
Yeah, one of the other things that I really liked about this was just kind of going like how he had a job while he was working on it, and that he didn't want to. He didn't want to quit doing it because it was something that he was passionate about, and he knew in his mind that even though he had this other thing going on and it might be a risk, he had to do it. That's what he wanted to do, and that's what he was going to do, and he did.
Yeah, there comes that point when you're chasing that dream, and you gotta take that Indiana Jones Last Crusade leap of faith, so to speak, but everything's a risk, right?
Indeed.
Keeping the job would have been a risk. Trying to be comic book creator, be author of manga, that's a risk. Everything's a risk. That's a great.
I wanted to put in that picture just
Whoever
because I
did
saw
that.
it and I'm like, man,
That's just great.
anime. There you go.
You have Gonzo Curse. Maybe I can't claim anime, but I was saying that at a convention not too long ago. People were like, "What were you saying?" I was like, "Oh, manime."
Manime.
And they're like looking at me like I was speaking Chinese. Or
I actually saw stuff for Anpanman and Baikimon in the international grocery place not too far from here. There was I saw things for it and I'm like, hey!
Wow. I think Saitama has earned his place next to all those other manly dudes.
I think he has. I think his humble beginnings deserve him a spot there.
But here's the true hero of the series. I don't care what anyone says to the contrary.
The not common writer.
That was pretty cool looking into this, though. I was like, Kamen Rider, I wonder. And then after watching it, I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure. They were going for that. And they were kind of hitting all the bases at one point.
Yeah.
Godzilla, Gamera, obviously here, / Cerberus.
They were hitting all the big Japanese ones. They had Kamen Rider, obviously, so.
Oh, here we're getting to, I hope this got some attention. What was it called again?
Gokuburi Buster. Yeah. Honestly, I mean, I know people are going to think I'm crazy for this, but I think Gokuburi Buster is better than One Punch Man. Like, oh my god, like, it needs to be made into either a one episode OVA or even a full movie. You could do a full movie about Gokuburi Buster and get away with it.
You could have, I mean, you'd have that Ghostbusters or feel. Yeah, the Ghostbusters feel. You could do maybe a couple little nods to Ghostbusters if you wanted. But just for that popular appeal, or just a one-off OVA. Heaven forbid we do some of those, right? Oh, some guy doing a podcast, huh? Have to look into that later.
Yeah, I wonder who that guy is.
Thank you, Alejandro. Speaking of following your dreams, he
blew up after this episode. I mean, not because of this episode. He was already doing his own thing, but he actually was starting to pick up more roles at Funimation, and I think that's actually the end of season 3. Can you believe it already?
Oh, wow. Here we are.
It's been an hour and 5 or 10 minutes already, but I just want to thank all of the people that we've worked with. All Goomba, Richard Epcar, Cinda, Kyle, Steven from A Bridge on Titan, and now he's doing Fist Punch. I think that's what it's called. Alejandro, Goomba, I think I already said Goomba. Just everybody Liz, all the people that
Ken from for the unreleased.
Yeah. Kimbolito, who's now doing, he's doing pretty successful for himself. But, I want to thank all the people that we worked with. It was great. It was fun. Season 3 was, one of the I definitely think one of the best seasons of Did You Know Anime of all time. It was a showstopper in a lot of different ways. I really don't have much more to say than that. What about yourself? You got anything else you want to say to anybody before we hit the hay?
Well, I'll second all of that. I don't know if we have time for it all, but I'm remembering now, since this was the first season, we started doing the Patreon, and it was right around, I think, the Azumanga Daioh episode where, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but this is where, you're the whole nexus of the operation, your computer was she was on her last legs.
Oh yeah.
And so got much needed upgrade. It was literally like she's gonna had a long time.
The motherboard was dying. Like I did not have. I was living on borrowed time at that point. Yeah. I couldn't use 2 RAM slots. It was taking me like 45 minutes to render stuff. It was not fun.
So just again, I mean, huge thank you to the Patreon supporters, because that is absolutely a tangible way and a clear instance where they saved the day.
Well, I don't want I don't want to sound like I'm being too sappy here, and I know probably a whole bunch of patrons say this, but I know that we don't update enough on Patreon or like talk about it, but that's because we're literally like knee deep in this most of the time. Like the deadline schedule doesn't feel like a lot because we're not releasing a whole lot, but to get all of this stuff out and get the people that we like and be able to have that buffer of time to be able to do that, we would not be able to do without the patrons, the Ben Barkers, the Daniel Calixes, the 420 Stoner Bong Masters, the Jordan Keeler, who we actually met at Minneapolis. We would not be able to do it without you guys, and we hope that you guys enjoy our content and think, and I'm glad that you think that we're worthy of being supported, because I'd like to think that the work that we put out there is something that everybody can enjoy.
We sure try our darndest anyway. So
that's for sure.
So I guess let's keep doing that. Keep trying our darndest, and we'll get to get back to the old grindstone.
Oh, yeah,
and you
God.
get the whip.
But thanks everybody for watching. It was tons of fun, and maybe when you get done listening to this, we'll already have season 4 commentary out for you. But this is Mike and John Lobo. Stay gold.